Now I will review the rest of the movies on my top documentary list. This is my top and favorite documentaries of all time. And here on number 16 we have Prohibition by Ken Burns. USA was a young country and they tried to recreate a society, tried to reinvent the way you could build a society, because they were not the old Europeans, they were a new country. And some of the things they did was, for example, prohibition. Another thing was gun ownership and stuff like that. But one of the things was prohibition. That was not a naturally occurring thing like guns, because people just had guns because the society was building up, so you didn't have police everywhere. But with prohibition you had a lot of female organizations and a lot of religious politicians and stuff like that, and kind of got together and got this law into effect. What of course they discovered was that the mafia started to sell a lot of alcohol, so it didn't really change the drinking culture, and there were a lot of really dangerous alcohol on the street. So it's about it's the same thing as we have with different kind of drugs now. There are a lot of different really dangerous drugs today on the street because there's no government to control them. So a lot of famous film actors and musicians are dying of different drugs because they're not pure. And also you cannot go to a drugstore and buy them. You have to go to a street dealer somewhere, and you can be mixed up with all this criminality. And a lot of really rich and sometimes even popular criminals are getting a lot of money this way. So, and prohibition kind of illustrates all this. The Juden, it's actually I saw it in English, so and it's a TV series. One episode is 45 minutes, but it's a TV series. It has a lot of episodes, and it was in English, and also it has an English title. But I couldn't find the English version of it on IMDb, so I added this, the Juden. Saw it on YouTube randomly. It was just a documentary about Jews. I thought, hey, whatever, I don't know anything about that topic, so let's see. And it was really fascinating story actually. I wish there were more of these kind of documentaries. Also nice it's made in Germany, because I mean it's not even made in Israel or anything like that, not even in USA, where I have a lot of money to make these kind of documentaries. So yeah, kind of big surprise that way. Also, I wish there were more of these great small documentaries from all over the world, but sometimes they are hard to watch. I can go to different sites online, and then sometimes they will have English subtitles, and sometimes some of these regional TV channels and national TV channels, they will upload some documentaries to YouTube and then put subtitles on them, but it's not often they do them. For example, for example, we have a Danish channel called Denmark Radio, and they never do that. If I take their documentaries and upload them to YouTube, they will often take them down again. So that's a terrible thing, and they're only online for like a few weeks. So there are a lot of great documentaries here made here in Denmark, a lot of stuff that no one in the world can see, because it's only on a Danish website for a few weeks and then it's removed. So yeah, I really wish more people would put it online. At least like make some documentary website that I can like pay some money to, and then I can watch all the documentaries I want on that website. Or maybe even like click random documentaries and like pay to watch them right from that site. This is actually some of the things PBS does, because it's not really a public station like Denmark's radio is, but it's I think some of it is public, and a lot of it is just people giving money to PBS to make these kind of documentaries, and they are making stuff like this, Scottsboro and the West. So they're giving Ken Burns a lot of money to make these slow-paced documentaries. these documentaries are not really made to shock or offend anyone or like create an organization for anything. They're just made to illustrate history and entertain while doing so. And this is what the West actually achieves. It does achieve to illustrate the history of USA and a lot of conflicts between the Indians and the Europeans and the Mexicans and all of these wars and a lot of destruction, but most of it is actually building. So it's you go into nature and you build stuff, and of course animals will die and the people that live there will die and some of the nature will die, but you also build a lot, and that's actually what this documentary is about. It's about building. I only gave it an 8 instead of a 9 because there are a lot of I think there were white people interviewed. They kind of played like Indians, so they were not acting Indians, but I think they saw themselves like as Indians. They're actually just regular people, and maybe some of them had Indians blood, but they're kind of talking about stuff that was happening 100 or 150 years ago, and they were really offended about what white people did to them. So it's really, really weird because, like, if something happened 130 years ago, they would still be offended by that one single thing. That's just pathetic. So that's kind of brought it down to an 8 from 9. I don't have anything against Native Americans at all. So it's just that they were stuck in the past. So. And Scottsboro, again, this trail documentary, again about a trail that's went amok. So you go to the southern states and you have a Jewish lawyer from New York, and of course these low-educated southern states they don't like this northern state or Jew that comes down to them and tell them what to do. And in reality, these black people were innocent. Everyone knew they were innocent. Not only themselves, not only their lawyer, who thought he would win this case, no doubt, because he was a fantastic lawyer. But the people in the southern states knew that these people will be imprisoned, and they will be imprisoned for life, because not because they did anything, but because they were black. They just did, because they want to show that they're in control. And no northern state man and no black people could take the control from them. So I think it's a fascinating look into a society and how we create in-groups and out-groups. When We Were Kings, it's one of the many Muhammad Ali documentaries that are out there and that I have seen. And this one is really well told, and it's a slow-paced documentary. So I think it's also really well made and really entertaining actually. It's not that I watch boxing, I really don't. I also don't watch basketball and stuff like that. I don't nearly only watch football, so soccer. That's that. But still, this is entertaining and this is great. It's a documentary about fighting, and you don't have to be an expert on boxing to enjoy it. And at least enjoy the historical value of boxing. Now we have Bowling for Columbine. I saw it in the theaters probably in 2003 then, and not 2002, because in Denmark everything comes late to theater, like 3 months after it released in USA. Sometimes it has world premiere, so but I don't know where I saw it, or at least not when I saw it. Michael Moore, it's the entertaining kind of documentary, and he always has a point of socialism and the support for poor people. So he really wants to get that across, and he forces a story and a storyline and an idea upon the documentary, and I think it works because it's an older documentary, so it was before this kind of style really caught up and really became something that everyone did. even in Denmark they do it now. This overblown, too much music, too much special effects, too much of everything. And Michael Moore really had this idea that documentaries should be provocative and entertain you, and also have a big message. So I think I like it because it's just over the top. It's ridiculous. And also, that actually I like the message too. It's not a bad message, and I think the message is important for kids to watch, and that guns are really dangerous. Actually, if you have a gun, you're more likely to kill yourself or someone you know and love than kill a robber. So a gun in a regular human's hands is it's a really dangerous thing. But maybe if you're an expert, then maybe it, and if you don't have any kind of mental illness and depression, then maybe it could help in some circumstances if you live in like a really dangerous society and need to protect yourself. But I don't know, I don't think so, because if you point a gun at someone, you better shoot, because he will then take out his gun. Thriller and the Manila, again, Ali versus Frazier. I think maybe they use some of the same scenes, but this is Foreman, and this is Thriller and the Manila. Rumble in the Jungle, Thriller and the Manila. Yeah, two different fights. I don't know which one. I think I like this one, this fight the most, because George Foreman, he later came out of the retirement. After Ali beat him, he kind of went into retirement because he was mentally broken down by Muhammad Ali, this bully and this really irritating asshole. So he was kind of broken down by losing this match, and he was not used to losing. He was such a huge guy that he could beat everything on earth. And then later he returned and started beating people up left and right, and even Tyson was too afraid to fight him, because Foreman, even in his 40s, I think he was 42 when I actually don't know, but I don't know how old he was when he returned, but he was pretty old, and even Tyson's tried to avoid him because he was just kicking ass left and right. He's such a huge supernatural talent. But another supernatural talent is Joe Frazier. They're also one of the best boxers of all time, and really a fighter. And actually what Ali did wrong was that he bragged a lot. He again tried to get a lot of people to talk about the fight, but at the same time he irritated Joe Frazier. And I think Joe Frazier is kind of stupid, so he didn't understand that when Ali said that Joe was a gorilla or whatever, that it was just to make more people watch the boxing match. It was not to irritate Joe Frazier, because they were actually good pals. But Joe Frazier was stupid, so he thought that Ali was offending him, so he tried to totally destroy him in the ring. But still Ali won, because yeah, Joe Frazier was beaten to a pulp, and Ali was beaten to a pulp too. But then right before Ali was about to throw the the towel in the ring, Joe Frazier's corner did it. So kind of lucky. They were both I don't know if they were close to dying, but they were probably both close to being smashed into pieces. And they fought three times, and this is just one of the fights. Lewis and the Brother, it's just a brawl. I'm not a huge fan of brawlers and stuff like that, because it's selling your body, and I don't know, I'm not a fan of this kind of stuff. Of course, people should be allowed to do it, and brothers should be legal, and I cannot say that it should be illegal, but I really hope that no one should sell their body because they have to. If they enjoy it, yeah, whatever. But if you're forced into it, then I think it's a really bad thing. And I really love this Louis Theroux episode, because there's a lot of humanity in it and a lot of weird and interesting things. Like one of the prostitutes, I think her husband shot himself, and before that he shot her in the head, so she was kind of crazy, and he flirted a lot with Louis, and she also started to irritate the owner of the establishment, because she was talking about how she slept with him. And he didn't like that, because he just continued talking about that. So yeah, I think a lot of crazy women could go into this business, because it's a simple business, and if you're good looking and you don't have much going on for you, you can go into that. But of course you can go into that if you enjoy it too. So you need to look at the stats and see how many are forced into prostitution. Horizon, the quest for Tarnotova. Horizon is one of the great shows, TV shows. Who makes it? I don't know if PBS it's in UK, so it cannot be BBC. Yeah, okay. Yeah, but I think some of the shows, they are made by BBC, and then Horizon uses them, but then they are also sold to Nova, and then Nova kind of rebrandish them and then sends them in USA. So maybe some of the documentaries, they are both sent in on BBC and PBS, but BBC and PBS are probably the best two channels for documentaries by far. And this one is the quest for Tarnotova in Russia. So it's kind of, I think maybe it was an own country a long time ago, at least it's like a small republic for itself. They want to be their own people. But Richard Feynman was a really creative guy, and he loved to live life and loved to explore life, and they were talking about how they wanted to visit the Tarnotova, but it was mostly an idea, like a creative idea. So I really like this documentary. It's such a fascinating tale. And then of course he dies before he can go there, because in USSR you have to be allowed to travel into the country. A bit like with a lot of communist countries, you have to have 1 billion documents and have to bribe the right people to be allowed into the country. That's how it was with a closed out system, because it's a dictatorship and they want to control every information that gets it in and out of the country. But because Richard Feynman was kind of a big shot, one of the greatest scientists of the last century, then he was allowed to go to the country. But again, it took a lot of time. The Armstrong lie, you know what this is about, but I think it's such a fascinating tale, because there's so much to tell. Like even one season of Tour de France, it's a huge story. You can make like a 5-hour documentary about one season of Tour de France, and it will be amazing, because there's so much to tell, so many historical things, so many bicyclists that have histories of their own, and the commentators have their histories, and there's wife, kids, and spectators and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff going on. And then when you have a superstar like this one, and he's a winner, and he's a doper, and he's super famous and super rich, then you have a great story. This is such a fascinating tale that it's hard to even believe that it's real, because it really feels like it's a movie. Someone like wrote the craziest story he can make up, but it's true. And I think everyone is doping still today. You need some doping to get ahead, but today you microdope instead of just doing as much EPO as your body can take. You take microdoses, so just a tiny bit, just to get a little bit ahead. But you still need to take it, because it cannot be discovered in your body, and you get a tiny bit ahead. So you always need some kind of doping, but the problem is so small today that it's not really a big deal. And this microdoping, that I'm pretty sure 100% of cyclists do it, at least on that level, and even none on a high amateur level. But I don't think it's that big a problem anymore. Atom, this is from BBC. I know that because Jim Al Kahili is English, and he actually studied at Copenhagen at one point in his physics degree, but now he works in England. And he's presenter now, mostly. I don't think he works in physics anymore. And here he presents the atom in a mini-series that just overfilled with information, a lot of quality, a lot of historical value, with a lot of people being presented in a fast pace. And also these people have a lot of science they have done, so he presents the science and the people, and it's all mixed together. And that's what's really great, because just presenting a person would be boring, and just presenting the science would be kind of dry. But when you mix it all together, it becomes a fascinating tale of the evolving society and our evolving understanding of the atom. 100 indvandring. Actually, some of these things are hard to documentaries are hard to put on the list, because, for example, this one, I put it on YouTube. I actually took it from the site and put it on YouTube because fuck it, it needs to be on the internet. It can't just disappear forever from all of humanity. But I still think it lacks the English subtitles, because no one has done them. Maybe I will do them at some point in time. I don't know if I have done it. I don't think so. But not many people can watch it because it's in Danish. But it's super fascinating, because you see the different groups: the Polacks, the Hungarians, the Jews, and the Jews' second immigration of Jews, the Turks. Maybe the Turks was the last one in this series. But you see all these immigrants coming to Denmark, and most of them are actually invited into Denmark. So they invite a lot of immigrants, for example, from Hungary. After their war with Russia, they invite them in to support them, and then there's a lot of problems with them, criminality. They have a lot of problems adapting, learning the language, getting work, stuff like that. But it's always inviting immigrants, and a lot of them at the end start to integrate. For example, the first wave of Jews got really rich in Denmark. I don't know what happened with the second wave that came during World War II, but I actually don't hear much about them and the problems they caused. So I think they are well integrated today. And then before that, we had the Polacks that were brought to Denmark to work the fields, the sukkerroer, like sugar, and they are also well integrated today, I think. Or maybe they even all returned back, because you don't hear a lot of problems about them. But today we again invite a new wave of immigrants, and then you will see new episodes about that. The Dog Whisperer, and this is Nuno and Kane. I like this one because I have studied psychology. I have a master's degree in psychology. I like it because it's behavior psychology, but it's presented in one episode, a really short episode. And it's really all you need to know about about stimulus response and stuff like that. And you will understand how dog brain work. And then you will understand how human brain works, because we have the same mechanism as the dog has. So we have the same brain mechanisms, but then we have some mechanisms on top of that. So it's not like we cannot learn like a dog. We can, and we do learn like a dog, but we also learn in other ways too. So I think that's important in this way. That's why I gave it a 10, because it's such a great deep understanding of how animals, including humans, learn. Horizon, Deep disaster. I think this is a great one because it's about the Deepwater disaster. It's really that short, only 50 minutes. It's a fascinating tale about how they fucked up and then fucked up again, fucked up again, fucked up again, fucked up again, and then keep fucking up. So a lot of mistakes were made, and they just couldn't fix the hole. And I think it's such a, these fucks up are always a fascinating tale. I love this kind of stuff, like engineering mistakes or mistakes in space travel or whatever, where people do some really huge and silly mistakes that just it's just hard to imagine that these geniuses and super rich people, some of these people get 100 million a year in wages, but still they make these huge mistakes. And it's funny that you as a regular newbie could have done a better job than them. Interesting. And this was what I actually sent on PBS and BBC. Huh, interesting. There's also a movie about it. I really want to see it. Like a new movie about the Deepwater disaster, but only on one plant. All plant, yeah. American Experience, John Ford. Again, this is the same narrator as the one Ken Burns used in his. I can recognize his name. I really like this one because it's long. These documentaries need to be as long as possible because there's a lot of history in them. So actually you can like have maybe 5 hours for 1 year or something like that if it's about all of America or maybe all the world. And Henry Ford is a history of a world and is a history of how he started a huge company that built cars. Once Brothers, really called that. I remember it as Once We Were Brothers. Well, maybe it's called Once Brothers. Okay. Interesting tale because Yugoslavia probably had some of the greatest sports talent in the world. Not only in basketball, but in soccer and different kind of sports. It was a huge country, and they had incredible teams, sports teams. And the basketball team was one of those incredible sports teams. Of course, they could not beat USA, but they were not that far off. And also today, if they had a combined soccer team, that soccer team would be on the top of the world. Not the best in the world, but among the best. Such a heartwarming tale. Also about the conflicts between religions and different states in Yugoslavia. A lot of idiots fighting. There we have them, the idiots fighting. Again, a lot of people that are complaining about the past because yeah, they think that stuff that happened 500 years or 1000 years ago are super important for them and their lives today. And they also think that religion is super important. Of course, I don't give a hell about any kind of religion, but they do, and they think it's super important. And this is the death of Yugoslavia is the good one. Then there's a continuation. I think in the second one we see the bombing of Kosovo. So as Kosovo just became independent a few years ago, they didn't have their independence, that documentary. So maybe they should make like an episode 3. But the first one, the death of Yugoslavia, is amazing. And just watching an independence would probably be a bit boring. They still have a lot of conflicts, and with Kosovo there are Muslims, and then Serbia there are Christians, and Serbia that wants to take Kosovo back, a bit like China wants Tibet to keep Tibet, and Russia wants to take over Crimea. So I think we'll see another conflict, no doubt. We'll see some conflicts in Europe again, and maybe there will be created in the former Yugoslavia. Could be. There are always war in Europe, and right now there are not that many conflicts, so just pick a country. The Trials of Darren Hunt. Again, this is a fascinating tale because, again, this is about the wrongly accused man. And what I think is really fascinating about these tales is how the police and investigators and prosecutors go about the case. I think that's really where the fascinating part comes up, because if you really believe that he was not innocent, I can't really remember what happens here, but if you really believe that these people were not innocent, that maybe it would be a bit crazy documentary, but you wouldn't feel that he was treated unfairly. You would feel that he got a fair trial. But usually in these cases, the police doesn't understand they're doing something wrong. So usually a police officer, when he, for example, shows a picture of someone he thinks is the criminal to the victim and tries to let her remember him, then he thinks he's just helping her along and helping the police department prosecute the criminal. But in reality, he just picks a picture, so he has a bias, and then he follows the bias without being critical, without testing evidence. I think this is what really often happens these cases. And a lot of people are wrongly prosecuted and wrongly imprisoned, and some even are wrongly killed. And usually we don't find out about that, because when a guy gets a death penalty, then what can we do after the fact, and why should we investigate it further? Judgment Day, I really like this. It's a bit crazy because it's not really anti-religion, but a lot of these people in the trial, it's the second monkey trial too, as such. I think it's a school board. I think it's a school board that forced the teachers on the school to say that evolution was not a fact, and then that Christianity was as much as fact as evolution, or should also play a role in education. And some of the anti-religion is by some of the Christians that go to the courtroom and testify. They testify for the defense. So it's not really anti-religion, but they are saying that religion should not be used in the school setting. At least should not be forced upon the students. So yeah, I just call it anti-religion, but you can call it whatever you want to call it. But it's a really fascinating tale, and this is a documentary where one part just totally destroys the other part. So the judge was actually selected by George W. Bush. I think it's the new George W. Bush, and not his father who selected him. But he was an extremely conservative, very religious judge. So a lot of people thought he would be pro-religion in schools, but a judge is a judge, and a judge knows that he needs to be just a bit objective at times, and of course the judge knew it too. And this is such a clear case that even if he's extremely religious, he would know what's wrong and right here. Soccer Stories, Hillborough. Actually, this is from Europe. I wonder if this is from BBC actually, but it does try to be a bit manipulative, because it is a huge strategy and a lot of people died, and a lot of corruption by the police, a lot of corruption by the government, by the media too. So there were a lot of corruption to cover it up and just blame the hooligans on it. And in reality, it was the stadium and the police that did a lot of mistakes. So I think it's sad, because the people who died and their families were made to be hooligans in the media. And it's sad that a lot of people die in your family and you're still made to be an asshole, and the ones who died in your family are made to be drunken assholes, and that's not really the reality. They just died because the police wasn't there to protect them. So it's a sad story that you feel that they are treated unfairly, but I don't think we can change much about them. We cannot change the corruption in the police force. We cannot change falsified paper documents in the police. We cannot change falsified statements and stuff like that. And then papers that disappear because they throw them out to not show them to anyone. And the government going in and trying to push an agenda. We cannot really change this stuff, but we can do and make documentaries about it, and we can make this stuff harder to come about. There's the walking with dinosaurs, and actually a lot of different walking with dinosaurs and walking with this and that. They don't really do them anymore because the new walking with dinosaurs is crap. And actually I think the new walking with dinosaurs are kind of like cartoonish. And then before that they had another walking with dinosaurs, and it was also really weird and terrible CGI. And this of course doesn't have great CGI because it's from 2001, but they actually filmed real landscapes and then put CGI on top of it. And in the second last walking with dinosaurs, they used CGI everywhere, so it just looked terrible, just horrible. I couldn't even watch it. They do say that the new that the old walking with dinosaurs was not that scientific. That's what they had to bring in Kenneth Branagh. I think he directed a lot of huge movies in Hollywood, and also he's a great actor, one of my favorite actors actually. So they had to bring him in instead of this other guy who did the Danny David Attenborough, yeah, instead of him, because he's actually a scientist. He knows a lot about nature, and he felt bad about being the narrator on a CGI film. But with the prehistoric beasts, you get a lot of beasts that lived in prehistoric times, these huge beasts, and this is such a fascinating tale. I really wish they could remake it, maybe update the CGI just a little bit, make it a little bit better, or maybe even film a new version, because prehistoric beast is they're amazing animals, and human beings lived where when they lived, and then we killed them off. But before they were killed off, they were actually walking about. Fantastic. And also some of these animals, they're not that well known as dinosaurs, so that's I find that fascinating too. Also, I consider this a bit more scientific than the dinosaur one. I'm not an expert on dinosaurs or prehistoric beasts at all, but I do know a bit about animals and stuff like that, and I do think that this is kind of realistic. For example, with the saber-tooth tiger, they will try to use modern tigers and then put the behavior on top of them, and it works because you really don't know how they behave, but you kind of figure that they could behave like regular tigers, or regular lions or whatever. It would make sense. Generation Earth, I was so fascinated by this one. Who made it? I think BBC again. Let's see. Yeah, BBC, of course. And with this one, they really outdid themselves. A lot of, for example, on a lot of shows on Horizon and Nova and stuff like that are terrible because they are scientific and they do bring in scientists, but then they became too flashy. Always scene changes everywhere, and always flash graphics, narrator that shouts, and a lot of terrible science, especially social science. We have a ton of horrible scientists going out in the media and talking about it, doing documentaries about their political views, and they do forget a bit to bring in the good science and just keep talking about the political views. But with Generation Earth, you have the real science and you have the real Earth, the real building, the real engineers doing real stuff, and not so much wailing and whining and people talking. I like this one. It's actually really short. It's only 50 minutes. So when it's 50 minutes and you get on the list of my favorite documentaries of all time, then you have done something really, really well. And with this one, you see the science and you see the lonely scientist. He's not really lonely because he has a beautiful wife at home and kids, but he's sitting at home and he's sitting up on his office and doing a lot of math all the time. Just addicted to his work, addicted to doing math. He works for the university, but he really works for himself, and he works on being the first one to discover Fermat's last proof. So Fermat's last theorem, whatever, proof for that. And at the end he does discover it. And I think this is also a fascinating tale, because most of the science, really groundbreaking science we do today, is made in groups. So we cannot just say that one guy did this and that, and we should never say that, because everything we have built in the world today is built collectively. Nothing was really built by single individuals. But I do also think that we should recognize that there have been a lot of people that have done more than their fair share. And this is one of these kind of stories. Fascinating tale. Also about how arrogant they are about being the first on the scene. They really want the first to prove something. And such a silly thing. But it's what it is. They enjoy it. They're stupid. Maybe not stupid, but crazy. Yes, Zachary, it's again a kind of created documentary, and this one was created in the studio. He has a great story, great interesting story. He has a lot of video recordings from different events. He has a lot of interviews. He has a lot of time on his hand, because what is he? He's a creative guy in the modern world. Had to get a job in different studios, so create your own thing. And this is a creator. He created this, but I also think it's a true story. So it was a real court case. It was a true story, and then he creates the narration on the true story, and I think it works really well. Even though it does, I know it's a bit like Columbine, Bowling for Columbine. It's a bit silly, a bit over the top, but I do respect it when it's made like this, because I recognize the silliness and I respect it because it entertains me. But mostly I hate these kind of documentaries. At least, yeah, they're not worth that much. Sometimes I hate them, sometimes I just don't care about them. What plans to talk about? This one I find fascinating, because I know a ton about human beings. I read as many books as I can about human beings. I mean, about psychology and science and social science and stuff like that. But then I saw this about plants and about communication between plants, some weird communication. Not really the communication we use, but really primitive communication. And I was really fascinated by it. And quantum physics and whatever, I think what's called quantum. I'm bad at words and names and stuff like that. PBS again. Oh, yeah. Yeah, but I think this is fascinating because I knew nothing about it. I know quite a bit about animals because I read about a lot of behavioral psychology in animals and a lot of stuff in that nature. But it's really weird that one like me would know quite a bit about plants, but know nothing about this. At least I've read about a lot about it, but I didn't know all the small details and stuff like that. And also, is it true or is it not true? I don't know, because it's not my scientific field. I think this is a lot of these economics documentaries are extremely biased, especially macroeconomics. They're extremely biased, and you need to be careful because a lot of them have really high ratings on this side and other sides, and are really recommended by people because they're fascinating and they tell a really clear and simplified and to the point story. So it's hard to get to discover a good money and the economics documentary. And their Scent of Money clearly does what it needs to do. It does present the true story of economics and the true history of our society and world. So you need to be careful. I've read a ton of economics books, a ton of books about micro and macroeconomics, and I try to read about it as much as possible so I can kind of like figure out when they try to bamboozle me. And this one is a great one. I think you need to read a ton of these macroeconomic books to understand when they're lying to you in these documentaries, and they do it all the time. Empire of Dreams, Star Wars making of documentary. It's kind of long. What do I remember about it? I think I remember. It's fascinating because you discover how they made the movie and how they cut it together. For example, a lot of the scenes from Luke and his friends, they were cut out. So I think he had like a girlfriend and friends, and he went to a bar with his friends, and he kind of went to a college and stuff like that, and all that was cut out. It would have made a totally different movie if it was left in the movie. And I think we kind of see who George Lucas is because the movie was recut. I think it was recut by his wife. Maybe she was already his ex at that point. But the editing and post-production really made the movie. It made it totally different from what it was made to be from the start. And also, good screenwriting. You need it. You need better screenwriting, because if you have great to the point screenwriting, then you don't need to cut any scene. These teams moving around in Europe, it happens really seldom. We have like Wimbledon in England, like lower division team. I think they moved, and then a new Wimbledon team was created, and the team that moved then renamed themselves to MK Dons. But it's seldom that it happens in Europe because we find it disgusting, and in USA it happens all the time. Like like even right now it happened. It had happened with a team, so it's so crazy. The teams, they move and their history just disappears, and then they're remade. They get a new name, they go to a new city, they get new players, new fans. It's such crazy thing. It's an extreme communism in sport, but it's also extreme capitalism. That money just decides where the team goes. And also it's communism because the teams cannot be demoted or promoted, so they support themselves. The owners want the sure thing. They want to make money, in Europe you can go bankrupt 1 year, and then of course next year you will be reopened as the same team, because the city will always support you and the fans will always support you. I think this is yeah, I get mad just thinking about it, that stuff like this happens. It's so sad. I would not even know what to do if my favorite team is FC Barcelona. If they move city, I know what I would do with myself. Messi affair. This one I watched a week ago. It just shows that I have not watched that many documentaries, because I always watch documentaries that I add to this list. So I really need to watch a lot more documentaries and then remake my list. But as of now, I've already watched a lot, and I like this one because actually I really like it, but I know why I added it to this list. Is really that good. It's really fascinating, super interesting, and of course it has no storyline. This Scottsboro, that's the other documentary I have. Yeah, but it's still a great documentary. Highly recommended. Even, is this the same guy that did all the other ones with Ken Burn? I think it is. But it's actually worth seeing, and that's a lot of, I think I liked it because there's a lot of culture, a lot of history compressed into one documentary. So you have a lot of white Navy people and whatever, the brown people, whatever, Latinos, rape, I have a hard time really, yeah, and Crazy Mother, yeah, I actually, yeah, this totally belongs on this list. I actually thought it was another documentary, but this totally belongs on this list. Great documentary, great, about the white Americans and how they fought for their rights to prosecute these weird, I think it was in Hawaiians. Waiting for Superman, kind of silly documentary about your school system and how you need to put your kids into the right system, and now they have a lottery. So if you're really lucky, your kid will go to a great school. So if you're from a ghetto, it's kind of, you're playing the lottery to decide the future of your kid. What we do have is a school system where the worst schools are terrible, the worst neighborhoods are terrible for your kid. It is how it is. And then we can have good teachers or bad teachers, but at least you need to get away from terrible schools. If you go to an okay school or a great school, then maybe the difference is not that great again. But if you go to a terrible school, then that's terrible. And in USA, and in a lot of countries where the school gets money from the people in the area, you have really great schools in areas where rich people live, and then terrible schools in areas where poor people live, and it's a huge problem. So maybe I will remove it from my list one of these days, because Hjernevask is so much better at illustrating points about education via science, and this has no science in it. Nearly all the social science and education and stuff like that documentaries I've seen, they're not scientific. They're just propaganda or political bias or stuff like that. And this is fairly objective, but not really. it is really subjective. It tries to push a point across, and I do not know the stats about terrible schools and good schools, but if you have a really bad school, that's no doubt that's a bad thing for a kid. And King of Kong, I gave it an 8 at the beginning. Right after I saw it, I gave it a 7 because it's really not that great a documentary. But I love the ending, and I love the message, and I love the story of the corn in USA and how it's subsidized by the government. Again, I don't know why, but it seems like the government and the states in USA love to subsidize things. So they're communists, totally. And this corn cannot be eaten. It's made into sugar, like syrup, and it's put into everything because it's extremely cheap. So they try to put it in everything they can put it into. So you have sugar and everything, and you have corn and everything now. And because they're subsidizing it, it becomes extremely cheap, and the farmers produce as much of it as possible because they're getting money from just producing it. And it would actually be fascinating to see what will happen with it if the government stops subsidizing it. Maybe we'll eat a lot less sugar. And then also the farmers will probably have to grow something that we actually need, and more people will have something to eat. Maybe forests will regrow, and a lot of stuff like that will happen. So yeah, it's a fascinating tale. And especially in poor countries, they cannot compete with our production of food in the Western countries. We have a lot of rules, for example in Europe, about what food to throw out. So we have mountains of food, or at least we call them mountains. I don't know if there are physical mountains. But for example, if you produce too much milk, you have to go to a drain and then pull it. Then yeah, just empty all your milk there, because you produce too much, so you have to throw it out. You cannot have too much milk because every farmer needs to earn a living in Europe. And when you subsidize food with these extreme amount of money, and we're talking about extremes here, especially in France, where a lot of protesters are always protesting and getting a lot of money from the government, and also in Denmark we have that too. And in African countries they cannot compete with that. Not because they could compete on a free market, and they have cheap labor, and they could also import some technology and try to produce cheap food, maybe cheap GMO food, but as of now they cannot produce food, and they're dying of hunger. So it is what it is, right? Dog Whisperer again, another episode. Which one is this? Again, no description. Then I have to invent the description then. Duke and Lulu and Sparky. I think this is again what fascinates me about these kind of stories is that a lot of the stuff it comes from the owner. Yeah, so if an owner has a panic disorder, or if an owner is nervous, then the dog will start to get nervous, because dogs have evolved through artificial selection to read our faces and read our emotion. So they always read us. They're better at reading us than chimpanzees. So dogs are really stupid, but even they are better than chimpanzees because they have evolved just that mechanism. A brain consists of different kind of mechanisms and systems, so you can be great at reading emotions and then terrible at other stuff. Or you can be intelligent and then terrible at reading faces or emotions. So it's different systems, and dogs have some of these kind of really interesting systems. So to really know how to control a dog, you need to control yourself, or at least know and understand how to control yourself. and then see how the dog reacts and try to learn the dog's behavior to understand what you need to do to get a healthy dog. Yeah. And I watched a lot of Dog Whisperer, and I was totally fascinated by it. But I have not watched all of them. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. It is silly entertainment. It is silly new style of TV shows with the focus on always flashing things and showing a lot of stuff and over the top narration and over the top everything. But he does keep it grounded, and the information is there to take up. So even though you don't like this kind of new silly kind of TV show, you still have a lot of information here, and some of these episodes are grounded and more focused on the information. So yeah, I had a hard time talking that much, but I think this was all, and this is my list of my favorite ever documentaries. And every documentary that's my favorite will get on the list. It doesn't matter how long the list is. And I watched a lot of documentaries, and a lot of them I really loved, but they don't belong on the list because they're not the greatest ever of all time. And these ones are all must watch. So yeah, of course you have to watch them all, and then some of them you will hate, especially if they're in a scientific area that you maybe don't like. For example, I don't watch cycling. I still enjoy it for what it is, right? And you can do that too. So try to open up to new information, new knowledge, and then watch a lot of documentaries.